I want to thank my longtime friend, Reverend Bernice King, for inviting me here, and thank you, Andy Young, for a lifetime of service and for a wonderful friendship. I saw Andy earlier today, and I said, Andy, I just watched Selma. Were you ever that thin? And he said, yes, he was. And they were dodging so many bullets and blows, they all needed to be skinny. Dr. Ferris, congratulations on your award. I want to thank Bernard Tyson and Kaiser Permanente for the wonderful work they do and congratulate them. And the Angel Award winners, Aidan Hornaday and Harris Rosen. I am glad to be in your presence. Thank you, Mayor Reed, for what you said and for your leadership. Thank you, HUD Secretary Julian Castro, my longtime friend, and Hillary's longtime friend. And I think David Thatcher, my former Surgeon General, is here. Thank you. I want to thank all the sponsors, but I especially want to thank Coca-Cola because we do so much work around the world together. And we just celebrated the 5th anniversary of the Haiti earthquake. And I remember when literally hundreds of thousands of people were at risk of poisoning because they had no access to clean water. Coca-Cola had a factory in the Dominican Republic next door, and they completely shut it down and began to produce nothing but bottled water to keep people alive. I will never forget that. So thank you, Lisa, for that. I have many friends here. My former Transportation Secretary, Rodney Slater, Veronica Biggins, who served with great distinction in my administration. I want to thank all of you. But I do want to say to Andy Young, I love you with all my heart, but it's just not true that I'm the most popular person on the planet. The Pope is. Look, after the Pope is, first of all, he is one cool dude. And secondly, we were having a pretty good run at it until 2 weeks ago, and he played a card I can't trump. He's told the children of the world that pets have souls and will meet them in heaven, and I was toast after that. And then my beloved lab, Seamus, whom I named for the great Irish poet Seamus Heaney, died 13 days short of his 13th birthday, and the Pope got my vote too. We're all laughing about this, but I wanted to make a more serious point. Long toward the end of my presidency, I made a farewell tour, thanking the people of my native state in Arkansas for their support, thanking the people of Chicago for their victory on the primary on St. Patrick's Day, which helped to ensure my nomination. I did a bunch of those stops. And I remember how grateful I was, and I won't get political, but one of the African American religious groups had been especially active on my behalf, and the presiding bishop was on the stage with me, and I was thanking them, and he was the president of the organization. He wasn't the presiding bishop, he was the president, and I said I was so glad to be in an organization led by a president who was not term limited. And he walked up to the microphone and he said, "Oh, we're all term limited." I never forgot that. I say that because if you haven't yet, when you go to see the movie Selma, you will see the enormous pressures imposed on the King family and the friends of Dr. King by his sense of his own mortality. It is a terrible thing to live with it as a looming threat, but a wonderful thing to be able to walk through life not afraid of its inevitable end. The difference is whether you live in a form of hell on earth or in a beloved community. So that's what I want to say to you. Stuff you saw up there, I don't deserve any credit for that. After the life I've had, what kind of person would I be if I didn't try to give other people who grew up in limited circumstances the same life chances I did? There are people with Nobel Prize winning brains in those little Incan villages in the top of the Andes in Peru that you saw, on those little 1 acre farms in Africa and Malawi and Tanzania and Rwanda, everywhere in the world. People with dreams and hopes. They deserve to be part of a beloved community. I was reminded all over again when I was sitting through Selma. And it wasn't like I didn't live through it, and I swear, just like it was the first time, when they went across the bridge the second time, I stood up and started cheering all by myself in my little room, like it was a surprise. But I was just evidence of the fact that we all want to live in a beloved community. We all want to think we can have a home. We all want to think we can do great things because we have a launching pad. In the film on the King Center, when the young people were talking about what it was like being in that 365 program, I thought, it gives them a home where it's okay not to hate, where it's okay not to lash back, to be in a culture that is whole, not shame-based. You scratch it a little bit, you look at all these terrorist incidents around the world, and I've got to retaliate for this, and I've got to retaliate for that. Shame-based cultures are a curse on the young. Faith-based cultures that are whole create beloved communities where you don't have to even think before the process of forgiveness and reconciliation begins. That's why the King Center is important today. In a world where there are people who, for power and money and bloodlust revenge, pretend to be religious, it is very important that we be reminded of what a beloved community is. It is very important to remember that at the end of his life, Dr. King was in Memphis, across the river from my native state, helping the sanitation workers on his way to kick off the Poor People's Campaign in Washington, D.C., because the beloved community is about inclusive economics and giving everybody a chance to work and be rewarded for it and to rise as hard as they fly as they can. The beloved community is about an inclusive society, which is why it's important that we've been celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Civil Rights signing beginning last year. And it is about inclusive politics, which is why it will be important in this year to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act. Our beloved community does not have us all being soft-headed and agreeing on everything and going all goo-goo on each other. It's just a place that says what we have in common is light years more important than what divides us. Now we can enjoy our arguments. Now we can profit from our disagreements. Now we can learn from each other and our different experiences because we have accepted our obligation to create a beloved community. Now let's argue about how best to do it. Since nobody knows everything and nobody's right all the time. If you look at all the places in the world where people should be glorying in their youth and instead looking for some way to blow themselves to smithereens because they have been convinced that God has something to do with a culture of constant anger and resentment, and it really is okay to kill people for no good reason other than that they are on a different path to find the same God you have. Trust me, this has never been more important. The most important conflicts in the world today are not over economic policy, though they are profoundly important. Not over voting rights, though they are really important. Who would have thought the Voting Rights Act would someday be used to isolate the African American community? Relax, you win every election, it's just that you won't have any power anymore. As important as all this is, the most important conflicts in the world today are identity conflicts. And the first decision everybody has to make in a world where we're all term limited is whether or not our differences or our common humanity is most important. The beloved community has a one bottom line expression. Our common humanity is more important than our interesting differences. That's the only way we'll ever get to getting the benefits of our differences. In my last year as president, we succeeded in sequencing the human genome. I spent $3 billion of your money on it. I hope it's okay. I think it was worth every penny. We have now received, in the last 15 years, according to a survey done last year, $186 billion in return investment on that initial $3 billion. But far more important is what we know about each other. And we know, if you look around this vast, diverse crowd tonight, that every single difference you can see in the group that is not age-related is rooted in 0.5% of our genome. We are otherwise 99.5% the same. Men and women, white, African American, Hispanic, Asian, every single non-age-related difference you can see in this audience, every single one is rooted in 0.5% of your genome. But we spend 99.5% of our time thinking about that 0.5% that's different. Don't we? If I had a jump like Michael Jordan, I'd gone into a different line of work. If I could have just played my saxophone as well as Coltrane, I would have stayed in that line of work. If this, if that, if that, we all do it. It's not just politics. But it is a fool's errand not to spend more of our life's time focusing on those things we have in common. That is the only way to create a beloved community and to turn our differences into advantages that we can build on and learn from. And that is what this is about. So, thank you for the award. Thank you for what all of you do. Thank you to the King Center. Keep talking to those young people. The young need to believe. And they need to believe somebody's got their back and wants them to be able to live up to their God-given capacities. We must stop raising them in shame and raise them in pride. Stop raising them in hatred, raise them in love. Give them something to look forward to. "50 years ago, a lot of people took a lot of chances. Walking across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, just showing up for church one Sunday in Birmingham, driving people back home after they'd been a part of some movement activity. To get up and walk through the day and breathe was a chance. Now, we're all term limited, but they increased their risk of a short term so that you could be here in Atlanta, sitting at these fancy tables tonight, having good jobs, enjoying a good life. The least we can do is to give our young people a down payment on the real beloved community. Inclusive politics, inclusive society, inclusive economics, where our common humanity dwarfs our interesting differences. God bless you, and thank you all.